All right, Lindsay, I'm excited to have you as one of my, I'm calling it Convos with friends. So one of my friends, or with a crew is what I wanted to call it first, but having you on regularly to have conversations that you and I have offline, and letting other people kind of get into it, because I don't know, I always enjoy talking to you. I leave feeling better about myself. Also like more excited about the work that I'm doing. And I just think that there's a lot of things we talk about that people who are pursuing their authentic life would benefit from hearing. So I'm excited to have you on, and thank you for being willing to come join me on a regular basis to keep the convos going.
It's my pleasure. This is going to be so much fun. I always enjoy our conversations as well.
And we already wasted 15 minutes before I hit record. Like things got started. But before we get into today's conversation, which I'll just set the stage. Last time Lindsay and I talked, we talked about kind of like somatic work, somatic healing. She challenged me to do it. I have not done it since, but I have something I'm working on in the background just for myself, that the somatic work is part of it. Yeah. But I thought it was really interesting because really somatic work didn't come on my radar for maybe the last year. I bought some books on it. I didn't read very much, but the way we were talking about it and living in our head versus living in our heart, all these things, I just thought that would be really good, if nothing else, to put it on the radar of listeners and viewers. So that's going to be the beginning of the conversation today, and we'll just see where it goes. Before we get there, can you please just, anybody who's never met Lindsay Troxell before, give an introduction to yourself, however you want to do it. And then we won't have to do intros in the future because people will know you and you'll have a fan base that come to the show when they know Lindsay's going to be on.
Well, my name is Lindsay Troxell. I've been in the financial services industry for 20 years. And so kind of my authentic story, my authentic journey was I was meant to be part of a family business coming out of college. And the one thing that I didn't learn by going to school for business was how to interact with family in family business. And so I quickly had to pivot and found myself inside of financial services. And very quickly, I actually just released an article on this morning about my own burnout journey, but I started as a insurance sales rep. And didn't take me too long to realize that I was not meant to be an insurance sales rep. I was meant to be a coach and consultant. I spent all of my time inside of the office working with all of my colleagues and helping them perform better. And so the light bulb went off real early for me that part of my identity was to be a coach. And so that's how I've really built my life for the last 20 years, is working as a business coach and consultant, and realizing over time that wasn't a complete picture for me. There needed to be a little bit more. I would give people, tools and techniques and strategies, and they wouldn't execute. And so I started to recognize that a lot of the things that would get in people's way was mindset. The junk that just lives in our brain. Like, I don't have time for this, or I don't know if this is going to work, or I don't know where to go next. Like those simple, tiny sentences inside of our brain that just cause us to stop taking action or take misaligned action. So I started integrating more mindset into my work. And then I realized that there's still a missing piece. And that was the somatics. And so, for me, it's so much of my identity. I'm child-free. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a hippie. I'm not your traditional business coach or consultant that lives inside of the financial services world. But it's so much of who I am. It's such a deep part of my identity. I love this work. I love serving others. I love helping people tap into who they are at their core so that they can live their best lives. And so, yeah, that's who I am.
So it's obvious why Lindsay and I are friends, right? Like we both happen to be in finance, but like this conversation is not going to be a financial planning conversation. Mm-mm. Obviously, the people that I know and a lot of them who are going to be a part of these conversations are in finance, but you'll see that so much of our conversations live outside of that. But obviously, you're going to be around people in the same profession a lot. I want to ask a question first before we talk about somatics and have you give an intro to what that is. How did you gain the confidence or get to the position where you could embrace being you in this space of finance, which likes to box us in certain ways we're supposed to be? So like me, you are not somebody who fits into that box. And whether it be being a hippie and a LinkedIn post we're going to talk about later on, or just like incorporating somatics and mindset into your work with financial services? Like, how did you get to the point where you were just like, if anybody doesn't like it, forget it. I'm going to be me and I'm going to show up. How did you get to that point? Mm-hmm.
My first glimpse of it probably was 2014, when I had a colleague who really was more of himself, and he was a little bit of a hippie, and we kind of jived over our love of music and going to shows together, and he was big into fish. And I was like, you're not the traditional stuff suit consultant inside of financial services. And so he gave me a little bit of a glimpse of, you don't need to be what other people say you need to be. But it was really hard, because for the first, until 2023, when I launched my business, I was inside of corporate consulting roles. And so there was an expectation that I was going to wear a suit, and there was an expectation that I was going to play by the book. And there was an expectation that I wasn't going to bring my whole self to work. And I think that there's an element of that as you're building your career that is expected, right? You got to kind of play the game. And I got a lot of amazing knowledge and experience and exposure as a result of it, but I would burn out over and over and over again. And what I finally realized that was, my burnout kept coming from the fact that I was being asked to be an employee. And fundamentally, at my core, my identity is entrepreneur. And so I was never going to fit inside of that box. And if I wanted to stop burning out, I was going to need to make a major change in my life. And that's when I launched my business. And even at first, when I launched the business, I was like, oh, I'm supposed to follow this path, and I'm supposed to look a certain way. And finally, I made the decision that in order to truly be happy and fulfilled in life, I needed to let down that guard, and I needed to start showing up in, my bandana and having conversations that went far beyond the surface, and challenge people to, when somebody thinks they're hiring a business coach, oftentimes they think that they are just going to get more strategies of like, this is how you develop a niche, or this is how you price your business. And when I'm sitting there going, how do you feel in your body when you talk about that idea? It jars people at first. So there's a certain amount of, you've got to be ready to cast people aside that aren't going to get what it is that you're doing, and they're not going to appreciate the nuance of what it looks like to step fully into your authentic self. And oftentimes, part of that is because they themselves haven't been able to do that. I've had a couple of people, we'll talk about the LinkedIn post, but I've had a couple of people reach out in my DMs being like, I'm so glad that you shared your story. I'm not ready to share that story, but I want to go there. And I'm just not, like, how do I get the courage to step into that space? I think the courage comes from no longer wanting to rail your head against the wall.
On the burnout thing, there's a couple things I thought of that I wanted to just hit on. Well, first, going back to being in the corporate environment and the expectations, and like there are those limitations, and some of those limitations infringe on our ability to be the most authentic, truest version of ourselves. But I do think that I think I've talked about this before, within those constraints, you can find your way to be the most authentic version of yourself within those constraints. And so that you don't give up all of it, but that you can't freely be yourself because of those things. And I think there's periods of time, especially if you think about careers, where that's the trade-off. The trade-off is I need experience. The trade-off is I need a salary, whatever it might be. Like there's reasons to be in that setting for a while. Yeah. And the trade-off is I might not be able to dress or speak the way I want to. Mm-hmm. I'm willing to make that trade-off and be as most authentic as I can within those constraints, but eventually I'm going to need to go on my own. So yes. I just wanted to highlight that because I know there's potential of somebody's going to be listening and like, well, I can't be it's easy for you guys to say that you own your businesses and I can't do that right now. Like we both have been there, but in those constraints, try to be as true to yourself as you can and then you can outgrow that need for the corporation or whatever, if that's what you need to be. So that was the first thing I wanted to point out. The second thing about the burnout, what I kind of came to the realization was, I think that the lack of being your true authentic self can lead to burnout, because basically what you're having to do is act.
Yeah,
Like
you're masking.
you're putting on this act, you're being this character, which that takes additional energy.
It's exhausting.
So you add the just day-to-day living energy, plus the energy to do the things you need to do for work and everything else. And then on top of that, the energy it takes to be something that isn't natural to you. That like, that's the tipping point that eventually all of that acting is kind of what the burnout comes from. And when you're being yourself, there's no extra energy exerted, because you're just being. So it makes me feel good, because that was something I just identified from myself and just observing people. So to hear somebody else who's been there, done that, and acknowledges that like that's a possibility, that's part of it, is the inauthenticity can lead to the burnout because of the extra energy it requires to be that, is encouraging to me, that I'm figuring things out that might have some truths to it.
Yeah, no. And I think that there's so many important factors that are in there, right? I think the point of, you kind of tolerate it for a period of time because there is that trade-off of some sort. And I think it becomes easier if you have sat down and you have a clear vision of what it is that you truly desire long term. And so you're working towards some sort of end game or goal, so that it doesn't just feel like you're on this hamster wheel and you're continuing to run with no real end in sight. And I think that the point about masking your true self is so incredibly important. And, there's so many different reasons that we do that. If we don't feel safe inside of an environment because there are not enough people that look like us, or I'm neurodivergent. And so I'm on the spectrum, and I have ADHD, and I have dyslexia. And so there's a ton of masking that happens, and a ton of just performative energy that gets expended, because I'm trying to figure out who you want me to be in a world that wasn't designed for me. And so, I because I have that entrepreneur identity in my core, I always knew that it was going to happen. And I have this like unwavering belief in myself and having my own back and loving my decisions. And, it had to come to that tipping point where finally I was like, it's now or never. It's now or never.
Well, I appreciate you sharing all of that as we lead into this somatic talk. So I guess for those who don't know what somatics is, what it is, can you give an intro of kind of like how you would describe it, and we'll just go from there?
Yeah. I mean, somatics to me is understanding how our bodies and our minds experience the world around us, right? So being able to reconnect to our bodies from a place of safety, it allows us to understand more of our overall lived experience. It gives us the ability to understand our own triggers and understand our challenges and our activation levels and how we're interacting with other people. So somatics is really the practice of looking inward and understanding how the sensations in our body are controlling in very many ways how we're showing up in the world. So it's really that interoceptive, being able to notice when you are tensing because of a feeling as though you need to potentially protect yourself. Noticing when you are experiencing exhaustion because you are maybe about to try something that's going to be really, really hard, really challenging, kind of scary, and your body creates that feeling of exhaustion to protect yourself so that you don't move forward, right? It's understanding how our nervous system plays a role in our overall lived experience. We tend to think that our body is just a passenger, like our body doesn't experience the world the way that our mind experiences the world. And that's just not true. Our body is a subjective participant in the role that we play in the world. So bringing somatics into this work that I do is absolutely critical, because if you're trying to take a chance, or if you're putting yourself in situations where maybe you're having challenging conversations, or literally if you're just a human out in the world that's bumping into other humans that are having other human lived experiences, understanding how your body is reacting to that situation is a critical component to understanding the lived experience.
So assuming that somebody's interested, like wants to figure this stuff out and kind of dive more into it, and they aren't working with somebody, like how can we begin to tap into kind of analyzing that ourselves and understanding it? And then we can talk more about like, what does it look like when you work with somebody? But just, if I just want to get an idea of like, okay, let me believe that my body is receiving things that I didn't realize before. Like, how does one begin to do that themselves?
Sit still. The first thing, sit still. You know, we live in a society that has programmed us to believe that motion and action and productivity and grinding and like just forward momentum and movement is the way to be. And, you know, in some instances that's true, but in order for us to find the source of all motion, we have to sit in stillness. And so the first thing that you want to do is just sit and notice. Notice what you experience internally. Notice the sensations that you're feeling. Don't try to analyze it, right? Our brains love to get involved in the process. They love to make meaning out of every feeling that we have. And the goal in this process is to not necessarily make meaning, but to pause and just be present and start to notice what you're experiencing. For people who have experienced trauma, this can be very challenging. Sometimes what we do is we cut the cord between the body and the brain, and we start just living inside of the brain. And our brains are beautiful and they're powerful, but they don't give us the whole message. And so often what we have to do is integrate the two parts. And the way that we do that is to sit with the stillness and start looking inward and telling ourselves, you know, get the brain involved just by telling yourself, like, I am safe. I am safe. And sometimes that comes with looking around the room and noticing where your body is in relation to the room, and noticing how you're being supported by your chair, and doing body scans. All of these types of tools will help you connect inward and start to notice more interoception. Proprioception is, you know, how we notice where our body is in space. Interoception is the looking inward and noticing the sensations that are happening as a result of just our lived experience. So first step is just pausing and getting curious, but doing so without trying to make meaning of it. That's the first thing.
I want to touch on the body scans, because last time we talked, I was telling you about how like I struggle with body scanning, like visualization. I feel like I am very in tune with my intuition, self-awareness. Like I understand what I'm feeling and kind of why. Like an example being, for maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 months, I had shoulder pain to the point where if it didn't get better by the end of the summer, I was going to get looked at. Like I thought I tore my rotator cuff after years of like working out and stuff. Like, and now like nothing, it all feels good. But I don't know this to be true. And I wish I would have gone back to get like I wish I would have got an x-ray or MRI, whatever I needed, to see if there's something there. Cause I also wondered, did I like Joe Dispenza my shoulder and like through thought and power fixed it? Like, I don't know. I won't say that I will, because I don't have a before and after. But the point of this being, what I attributed the shoulder pain to was the tightness in my upper back. And I think some of the tightness was just from working out and getting back into it. But I also think that I was carrying stress that I didn't realize. Like I don't ever feel stressed. But I noticed I would catch myself with my shoulders up a lot more. And when I would catch it, I would like let it down. Now, I was supposed to do some somatic work to see if that would relieve. I didn't. I did do my practices to get more realigned, back to meditation, back to doing my yoga and taking care of myself and doing the things that pull me into alignment. But I would just tell you right now, like my back is not tight. My shoulder doesn't hurt. I have no pain in it. The mobility is all back. And to me, that's a little bit of me being able to do some somatic work of tap in and say, okay, I have this pain. It seems like it's a torn rotator cuff, but really I think it might be my back muscles pulling on my shoulder, but the back muscles are tight because I'm carrying this stress. And when I carry stress, it manifests in my upper back and my shoulders. And so part of it was like, whenever I would catch myself like this, I would just like put your shoulders down, like relax the shoulders. And that acknowledgement would allow it. And I would notice that it wasn't as tight. So I did some of the work, but back to the body scans, forever. Like when I get into the meditation and someone's guiding you to kind of go, like I can't, it's like, I don't know what a body scan is supposed to look like. Like I want somebody to tell me this is what you should see when you body scan. Cause I don't know. So like I can, if I close my eyes, I feel like I can body scan in my head, and you pointed this out, but as I get kind of past like the shoulders, I don't really know how to scan into my chest, into my stomach, and in my legs. And then, like I don't know, is it supposed to be a light on it? So anyways, body scans for me have been tough, even though I feel like I have a good connection internally to myself and I can listen to my body. And I don't know if you remember what you told me about like the interesting factor of like, once I get below my shoulders, I don't see the body scan, is that I'm living up
in your
here.
head. Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
I mean, again, we tend to just sever that cord. And so it's very common that, you know, people can do it up here and then they get stuck right about here, and everything below just feels a little bit fuzzy. And like, it's the most heady thing that you could possibly say to be like, I don't know if I'm doing it right.
Right. I'm aware of that. Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, we could spend the rest of our time on that alone, but it's...
Well, let's stay there. Like, say what you're going to say now, and then let's just stay there as long as we need to.
Yeah.
Because these are not scripted, so we can do more later.
It's staying with it for a longer period of time. We expect that things are going to happen quickly, and if they don't, or if there's not this profound shift, that we're doing it wrong or it's not going to work. And somatics respond to slow and gentle and patience and comfort. And so, you know, I think about even things like foam rolling, right? When you're working out and you're going hard and like you want to smash your quads at the end of a great workout, and if it doesn't hurt, then, you know, is it really doing anything? Somatics is the opposite of that. Being with your body and allowing things to release responds from slow. So even body scans where you're sitting there and you're like, I get to about here and I just don't know if I'm doing it right, if I'm supposed to shine a light. There is no right or wrong way, which is very frustrating, especially for those of us that start living in our head. We want there to be something specific, but just being present with the body and sitting there. And sometimes, you know, nothing is going to show up, and that's okay. But then you come back and you do it again, and maybe nothing shows up, and that's okay. But if you keep showing up, then something will show up. So going back to the practice that you were using, you've got somatic tools that work for you. And you going through the process of kind of healing your shoulder and recognizing that you were carrying stress around and actually tensing as you were experiencing things, right? And then consciously deciding to let that go. That is a somatic practice. Our muscles respond to slow. And so the whole idea here is that we want to find a way to not be walking through life as though we are stuck in fight or flight, as though we are prepared to experience something, as though we are bracing. And that can be in a number of different areas, right? It could be as we're trying to do something in our business, as we are experiencing a relationship with the people that we love, as we are just approaching new challenges. Oftentimes we will have these reflexive, autonomic experiences inside of our body that create additional tension and subconsciously keep us from fully engaging. And so, again, when we have that sever, we need to start integrating differently. And so maybe body scans for you isn't where you end up starting. Somatics has such a wide range of different tools depending on if you are experiencing hyper arousal or hypo arousal. Hyper being, high activation, more of that fight or flight. Hypo being more of the depressed and low activation, where you are getting even caught inside of like freeze or fawn. And so, depending on what you're experiencing, we're actually going to use different types of somatics in order to help a person become more online, if you will, to tune in and understand and feel what's going on. And so for some people, instead of doing a body scan first, you might actually use a tennis ball and start rolling the fascia on your body so that you can start to feel your body, right? This is just about feeling your body and feeling the sensations. And so that light touch gives you a little bit more of that sensory response so that you can start noticing what it feels like to feel your body in a very safe way. So, breath work, foam rolling your fascia with a tennis ball.
What was the tool that you told me to get? Like, I feel like it wasn't a tennis ball. It was more expensive than a tennis ball, but I can't remember what it was. You remember?
Was it the spiky ball?
I don't know if it was a spiky ball.
I don't know.
Oh, well, I'll have to go back and see. I think I have it in the text message or something. If I can find it, I'll add it in the show notes. I can't remember what it was.
Okay.
I feel like it was a couple $100, whatever it was. Like, it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't super expensive.
Oh, the EMDR eggs.
Yes, the eggs.
So
yes.
EMDR is another way. Again, if you're having a hard time, I mean, most time EMDR is something that you're using in conjunction with going to therapy. And so lots of times you are exposed to it in the very first. I would suggest that you don't necessarily tap into it by yourself unless you feel like you are in a supportive environment. It's not something, because it will bring up lots of internal sensations. It will bring up potentially past traumas, but they are two vibrating eggs. This is just one of the ways to do EMDR. There's a number of different ways to do EMDR, but these are two vibrating eggs that you hold in your hands. And what it allows you to do, again, is drop out of your head where you're trying to think of what's going on or think of the problem or think of, the trapped memory, or drop into your body through thinking about dropping into your body and like, am I doing it right? You feel these vibrating eggs inside of your hands, and they allow you to start feeling sensations inside of your body, right? You feel the vibration coming up your arm, and maybe you start noticing that there's also some vibration in your legs, or you're starting to notice the tensing in your back. So it just gives your brain a way to kind of turn off and your body a way to turn on. Very helpful.
I'm glad you mentioned it, so I can at least make sure I revisit those again. But I knew there was another tool that you had told me about. So when somebody, they're doing the body scans, they're sitting time after time, nothing comes up, which is okay. Something comes up. Like, what do we do? Again, if we're doing it by ourselves, if we're doing this work on our own, something comes up, what next? Like, what do we do with that?
Sit with it. Sit with it. Notice the sensations in your body. Don't try to make meaning of them, but sit with it for a second. Remind yourself that you are safe. Remind yourself that you are loved, that you are supported. Feel literally the support in your sits bones, right? Give yourself that gift of safety. And this is where, again, if somebody has experienced trauma, and there's all different forms of trauma, it's almost impossible for us not to get through life, trauma-free. But if there are more complex traumas or systemic traumas or, kind of flash traumas that come up, I would say find somebody to help you work through that. Find somebody to help you hold space, whether it's a therapist or a coach, somebody who really understands trauma. What I've been finding is that not a lot of people do understand trauma. Even therapists, therapy. I've talked to a number of therapists throughout my journey where they say, yeah, we had a very short training in trauma, but it wasn't extensive. So, if you are somebody who has experienced trauma or think you've experienced trauma, find somebody who is trauma informed. Find somebody who has the ability to hold that space for you, because trauma needs to be titrated, and it needs to be titrated slowly. So when you bring something up into the surface, and this isn't something to be afraid of, right? We can relive the traumas that we experience. And if you are still in an active situation where you are not feeling safe, that makes it even more challenging. But if the trauma is in the past, right, we have the ability to titrate that in a way. There's really fascinating research that talks about completing the stress cycle, right? So there's in Peter Levine's book about trauma, it's in an unspoken voice, I believe is the name of his book. But he talks about how when we experience a trauma and we complete the stress cycle, the likelihood of us experiencing PTSD from that trauma is significantly reduced. But if we experience a trauma and we don't have the ability to complete the stress cycle, right? Think about animals in the wild, where a giraffe is being chased or a gazelle is being chased by a lion or a tiger. When they get to the end of running, they shake. That's them completing the stress cycle. And so when these things start to come up for us, we need to find a way to complete the stress cycle in order to start diffusing that trapped experience inside of our body. They say that the trauma gets trapped inside of our body. And so again, there's so many different forms of trauma. Some people will call it little t versus big T traumas. I don't really like that big versus little. I like more of the seen versus unseen traumas, or, hidden versus visible. And so some of the more seen ones would be the big ones, a death or an accident or, an assault or systemic traumas of oppression, right? Those things that we look at it and we're like, that's obviously trauma. But there are other traumas that, turn into core belief systems. Somebody says something to you at some point in time and it completely rocks your world. Microaggressions, right? All of those things can be unseen traumas that we carry around that get trapped inside of our body. And so that's the stuff that starts to come up. It doesn't have to be scary, but being able to complete that stress cycle gives us the ability to diffuse it. And so, some people will do shaking, shake it out. Other people will do more of the body scans and the rolling, cold therapy, anything that allows you really to tap in and stimulate your vagus nerve. So exposing the back of your neck to cold. So all of these things can be really helpful when you start to bring up those feelings and those emotions and maybe those visions of a situation that you experienced.
I noticed that multiple times you've said to tell yourself you're safe, tell yourself you're loved. Why?
It's it's at the core, right? Being able to remind ourselves that there isn't a tiger outside of the cave. And for some people that's a privilege, right? To be able to really truly be safe, because they aren't, right? But for you and I right now, experiencing what we're experiencing, there's no tiger outside of your door. You're not going to die. But our brains weren't wired that way. They were designed to scan the environment constantly for things that could harm us or the people that we love. And so our primitive brains really don't necessarily know the difference between something that's mildly uncomfortable and potential threat or danger. And so being able to bring your brain in connection, right? Bring your prefrontal cortex into the conversation instead of just letting your amygdala run the show, which it oftentimes does, especially if we've experienced chronic stress, right? When we experience chronic stress, one of the things that's crazy that happens, that excess cortisol inside of our brain, it causes our amygdala to enlarge and our prefrontal cortex to shrink. And so that's why, if you've got people who are experiencing chronic stress, it seems like they've got really short fuses. It's because they do. It's because their prefrontal cortex isn't online the same way that it is when they are feeling regulated and inside of their window of tolerance. So reminding yourself that you are safe and like even touching your body and like hugging yourself and creating some of that compression, it brings us back to that primitive space of, right now I am safe. I'm inside of this room. I can see the walls. I know that there's no immediate threat. That can be incredibly regulating for your nervous system.
Okay. I knew it had to be important because you mentioned it multiple times. I just wanted to elaborate on
Big
that.
deal.
Before we go visit LinkedIn, is there anything else around kind of like the introduction to somatics and how we can do it that like you want to make sure we hit on?
I think it's just get started, give it a shot. Couple of the easy barriers to entry here. I love rolling. I love, rolling your feet out. There's so much research that's now starting to come to the surface that our fascia is probably just as important, if not more important, than our understanding our nervous system. And so the connective tissues that keep us together, that's where these emotions, these reflexive patterns get stored. And so starting with your feet and rolling your feet, and then taking the tennis ball or whatever it is that you're using as a roller, and then just gently rolling your entire body, but focusing kind of on the waist down. You almost don't need to go above the waist to experience the benefits. But for anybody that feels like, I've had this hip thing forever, I've had this shoulder thing forever, people see immediate being, within 2 to 3 weeks, relief from things that they have been experiencing for years, if not decades, simply by starting to release that trapped energy. And so it's just a fascinating experience.
I recommend a lacrosse ball for the feet, like getting a lacrosse ball because it's firmer than a tennis ball. Like that feels so good. It hurts, but it's like a good hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, we want to hurt. Just notice how you're like, I want to get in there and like use the hard lacrosse, use the soft one.
Okay.
It doesn't feel like you're doing something because again, our brains are programmed. If it's not hurting, you're not doing something. That's the opposite of doing work with somatics. Low, slow, gentle. If you find a spot and you're doing the gentle work, you'll still find the tension and find the spot. But when you find the spot, sit on it for a second and let out a very audible sigh, and it will start to release the tension. You'll actually experience the release of the muscles and the fascia underneath without having to grind. The fascia will contract if you are applying too much pressure. So it will hold on to the tension if you are being too firm with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, scratch that. Don't use the lacrosse ball. Use the tennis ball.
Use a tennis ball. Yeah.
All right. The only thing I wanted to highlight is I thought it was really, we didn't directly say it, but go back to my question about when something comes up, what should you do?
Yeah.
Like, I think that my takeaway from what you said was when something comes up, it may be a signal that it's time to go get help. Like, and not help in a bad way, but just that something has come up that you may not want to try to work through. You may not be able to work through on your own. So the next step might be going to find somebody to talk to through it that can help you kind of process it.
Absolutely. And if you feel comfortable doing it alone, complete the stress cycle. Sit with it. Don't try to overanalyze it. Allow it to be there. Notice what you're feeling. If you can name the feeling that's associated with it. You know, I've been doing some work recently, and the feeling that keeps coming up is shame, which is a fascinating emotion and gets trapped inside of the body. And so I just sit there and I feel the shame and I allow the shame to be there. And I don't try to change the shame. I just let it do what it's going to do, as well as sitting there and being like, you are safe, you are loved, you are supported. It's okay for you to experience shame. It's part of the human experience.
Completing the stress cycle is an interesting concept, and I think it's a good segue for heading over to LinkedIn, because I remember reading or hearing something about, like, psychedelics are something that are becoming more and more common. There's a lot of research behind it to say it's helpful for PTSD and different things. And one of the reasons was that for those who have PTSD, and I think they were talking about veterans, is that by taking a journey using psychedelics, it allows them to drop back into that experience, which you think you wouldn't want to, but for the sole purpose to, like, I don't think they said finish the stress cycle, but when you were describing this, like, it made sense. Like, oh, that's what it is. Like, that person didn't explain it that way, but it allows them to go back to whatever that event is that the PTSD is going to and complete the stress cycle.
Yeah.
So share with the audience, like, this LinkedIn thing that we keep on referring. What's this LinkedIn post that you shared just the other day?
Yeah, well, I just came back from a conference, and, for the last 2.5 years, I've really been leaning further and further and further into this work and showing up as myself. And so at this conference, I was like, you know what? I'm taking the gloves off. We're just going to sit down, and when somebody's asking me what it is that I'm working on right now, I'm going to tell them. And so 2 weeks ago, I just did another psilocybin journey, a pretty large one. And I come back to plant medicines. I mean, the first plant medicine that I ever used was marijuana. The second plant medicine I ever used was psilocybin, and the third was ayahuasca. And each has played a really significant role in my life and in shaping and reshaping my lived experiences. And so at this conference, I just, people are asking what I'm working on. And I have this dream in the future that I'm going to have a retreat center, and that I will bring some of my business clients together to do some sort of plant medicine journey, whether it's psilocybin or ayahuasca, depending on where it is that we go, and using it to help. Kind of the way that I think about it is, like, you kind of are shaking up the snow globe, and as the pieces refall inside the snow globe, you get to, like, decide where those pieces are going to go, those pieces of snow, and what form you want them to take. And so for 2 weeks after a plant medicine journey, your brain has incredible neuroplasticity. You can rewire habits, you can change belief systems that much easier. So it's not just the experience that you're having during the journey itself, it is the after work that you do. And we always talk about integration and integrating your experience and what happened, what did you see while you were on this journey, what did you notice, what did you feel? But also, it's truly the neuroplastic benefits that happen as a result of shaking up the snow globe. So yeah, I decided that I was going to start sharing that during this conference and start gauging the interest of whether or not there are people out there inside of our very conservative space that would be interested in partaking in a journey like this. Turns out the answer is yes. Every single person that I talked to, I probably have a list of like 15 people that were absolutely, I'm in 100%. When you do this, I want to be in that first group. So I decided to share it on LinkedIn and start talking about my own experience and how right before starting my business, I did an ayahuasca journey. And what I found out was I needed to be seen. And I've been hiding for a long time. I experienced some trauma. In 2014, I was assaulted at a conference by a financial advisor. And that shaped a lot of what you see today. I put on a lot of weight in order to protect myself, because that was the way that I could create this armor to go through the world and not attract unwanted attention because I didn't know how to handle it. And so on this journey, it was like, you need to get out there and be seen. It's time. But I still didn't have all of the tools that I needed. And so for the last 2.5 years, I've been collecting those tools. I found a somatic therapist that I'm working with. I've gone back and I've started my own journey through becoming certified as a psychosomatic practitioner myself. I've re-envisioned what it is that I want from my business in order to incorporate more of this work into it. So yeah, that was the LinkedIn post, was me putting that out to the world to say, I know that this isn't something that we talk about inside of our industry, but it's incredibly helpful. And I've seen it for so many people. Corey was an Army Ranger. My partner is Corey, for those of you that don't know that. He's also a financial advisor. But he was an Army Ranger. He, during 9/11, was doing body retrieval out of the Pentagon. He's experienced a number of traumas himself. And so years ago, I said to him, I was like, you're in a really tough spot right now. I think what you need to do is go out into the journey and do a bunch of mushrooms. And he has never been a guy that is a dabbler in any sort of drugs. So it really scared him. He was like, I don't know if that's for me. I feel like that's a little bit too outside of the realm of things that I might potentially try. I was like, I really feel like this is part of your journey. And he trusted me. And so I sent him off into the desert with some friends, and he came back a whole new person. He had a whole new look on life. He was able to see things for himself that he wasn't able to see before. And I credit it, and he does too, with saving his life. I think it was incredibly profound. That's one of the more extreme examples for people who don't necessarily suffer from any trauma or any trauma that they know about, but they're just looking for a little bit of that blockage clearing, to get unstuck or to see what path is next for them. This feels like, in some ways, a major shortcut to the process. And, why not? We're getting so much new knowledge every single day. There was just another study done with, larger doses of psilocybin regrowing gray matter inside of the brain. Like the neuroprotective elements here are not things to be, discounted.
And I think it's important to note that I love the fact that it's called a journey, because it's not the same as, dropping some acid or taking some mushrooms and going to a Fish concert. Like it's not the same, even though it's the same, like drugs, if you will.
Yeah, that can be fun.
But to me, the journey is it's with intention. And from what I've read and what I've studied, like the intention behind also matters. Like how you go into it kind of determines what the experience is going to be like. And if you're going in for growth or to solve things, then you're more likely to have a better outcome. If you're just going for a good time, then you're going to see elephants and all those types of things. So I think that the name is important. And I think it's important. Like I haven't gone on a journey, but I want to. And I'm excited that you shared this post. Like when I saw it, I think it was yesterday or the day before, I was like, yes, because you had said you wanted to share this eventually at some point. And so it was like not just a small share, it was a long share. I was like, yes, she did it. This is awesome. But I have a desire to do it. And it's like the more I've dove into the spirituality and understanding myself and kind of diving deeper. And obviously I share it with my wife that I want to do this. And just somebody who doesn't want to touch any drugs and never has. And she's like, well, why do you want to? And I said, I can't give you a reason why. I don't feel like I have any trauma that needs to be resolved. And maybe whenever I do this, I'll get something sprung on me that I've been hiding really, really well. Maybe but not. I told her the reason I want to do it is I just feel like over the last few years, I've gotten to know me internally better. And I have a new understanding of how I think I am structured, my new understanding of my soul and my purpose and those things. And I feel like going on a journey will help me discover more. Like I've had a couple breathwork sessions, and I've read that you can get to some of these states doing
Most certainly
breathwork.
can.
I've done some holotropic breath work where I feel like maybe I was on the verge,
Yeah.
and it's like I remember the first time I would like blindfolded, pitch black, doing the breath work, and I remember like seeing a face, and I'm pretty sure it was my face. And the weird thing was the face was darker than the darkness I was looking at, if that makes sense. And so I remember seeing it, and I remember wanting to go deeper. But as I would see it, my breath would begin to get more shallow. And so with the shallower breath, I felt like I was drifting like back into my body. So then I'd pick my breath up to try to go deep. And I just remember thinking like, I want to go deeper, but I didn't know how to do it. So my thought is a journey done the right way with somebody there as a guide, somebody there to help you integrate like in the moment afterwards, and then doing the integration afterwards. I don't view that as a bad thing. I view that as a way to get to know myself better, which is what I think will happen. I'll have even more clarity about what is the authentic life? What is my authentic life? What is my soul's purpose for being here? Because I think I'm getting closer and closer every single day. And if this can help me connect some dots, then I think it will help me help more people. So
you might you might also get the really maddening message that I got 2 weeks ago, which is I thought it was the largest psilocybin dose that I've ever done in a controlled setting with a group of licensed practitioners and all of the safety precautions, and it's incredibly safe. But like having somebody there and doing the lead up and the intention setting and the somatic work, and then doing the journey and then doing the integration afterwards. But during the session, what I got was, you're on the right path. And I was expecting something like crazy and profound and deep and like to see something more. And they were just like, yeah, no, you're good. You're doing exactly what you're meant to do. Just keep going. And so, sometimes the message is subtle and gentle, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's stuff that you got to work through. And it just depends on where you are in your process. And you get what you're meant to get. It's kind of like the thing that burners say when they go to Burning Man. It's like you get the burn that you needed, not the one you wanted.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that on LinkedIn because because it shows you being an even more authentic version of yourself. Not that you were faking, but there was this side of you that you didn't feel comfortable sharing. And for good reason, because there's a stigma around this type of stuff. Yeah. And I think that by having conversations and sharing that you've done it, me sharing that I want to do it, hopefully maybe it doesn't take away the stigma, but it will encourage people to, like, before you just think it's one thing, like, go research it, go read about it, go see the science behind it, and then go see the studies that how is really helping people like veterans with PTSD or anybody with PTSD. Like, it is tons of academic research that shows that it's helpful. Because what I think is going to happen is I think that there's going to be a growing number of people who are starting to do these things because of the success and the stories they hear from people they know, and the stigma is going to get broken down. And then you're going to have big pharma and the other things try to like bring back it's for hippies and da-da-da-da. Like, so I just think do your own research, come to your own conclusion. And if you still think that it's for burnouts and stoners and hippies, then so be it. But I think that if you read the research and see what's there, you'll realize that it really is a tool. It may not be a tool that you want to use, but you'll be a lot less judgmental from those who are using it because it can help them one way or another, help them overcome some trauma, or help them get to know themselves better, which is what I hope it is for me.
I think you would be hard pressed to find, like, if you pulled together some of the most successful business owners and, just entrepreneurs and heavy hitters that are out there, I think you'd be really hard pressed to find somebody who hasn't integrated this into their stack.
They're just not talking about it.
Yeah. Right. And a number of them are starting to talk about it and saying, this isn't something to experience or isn't something to make taboo. It's a really, really helpful tool, especially when you are using it appropriately.
Yeah. I think the way you do it and where you do it and who you do it with is important,
100%.
but it goes back to like, all of these things are like they're God made. They're natural. And there have been civilizations who have been using these things for, hundreds and thousands of years. Like, it's not like we just now discovered
Yeah.
psilocybin. Like,
This is ancient wisdom,
right.
right? Even somatics, it's ancient wisdom that we are tapping back into. And so, integrating it into your practice is for some people, and maybe it's just doing the breath work. Maybe that's somebody's entrance into being able to tap into this ancient wisdom. But if we come back to the body, if we come back to the breath, we come back to being in our own, it's a pretty powerful thing.
My final thought before we begin to wrap up, I look at the ancient part of all of this. Like, this stuff's been around forever. And you look at like what those civilizations were able to do without all of the stuff we have today. Like, this stuff helped them survive and grow, and like the foundation for where we are today. If you take that ancient wisdom combined with the technology and the advancement we have today, it's almost like we get the best of both worlds. Like, this stuff worked back then and has lasted for so long for a reason. And we have all these advancements that, like, we can take this thing that from the past can help us get to know our true self better, and then live in a world today with more technology. Like, to me, it's almost like it's the best of both worlds. We don't have to go back and not have anything, so we can lean on these things that have always been there. We can take what worked for thousands of years and combine that today with the advancements we have. And it's like, why would we not explore that more?
I think it's potentially the only way that we don't destroy ourselves. I think about the direction that we're going in as a society, and it's scary. And I think that there are things, tools that we have out there at our disposal, life planning being one of them, right? I think life planning and plant medicines and, being able to look inward with the goal that we are able to be in society in a much more powerful and connected way, right? We have never been more connected, yet we are more disconnected than ever. And so being able to tap back into our own source, but also then not get stuck inward. There is also a threat when we are doing all of this internal work and self-reflection, that we become too obsessed with the me and the I. And in order for us to survive, we need to be back in community with others. But sometimes it doesn't feel safe to be in community. And whether it's ego or, true protection, it's become very unsafe. So this, I think, is a tool for us to become better in community with one another.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I just had a random thought, since we were talking about journeys and stuff. I think we should probably throw a disclaimer of consult the right people. If you're thinking about doing this, don't go do it on your own. Treat it with respect. Whatever proper disclaimer, that's right here. We're not telling you that this is right for everybody. You should go do it. But I'm encouraging you more to learn more about it. And then if you are interested, find the right people to be able to do that.
They're licensed, Colorado and Oregon are the two places from psilocybin. There are licensed facilities in those locations that you can go and do it legally and safely, and under the care of a true licensed practitioner. So there are resources for you to tap into where you don't have to just, be out there on your own.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think this was a great first visit on the rounds. I want to thank you for being so vulnerable and going into these things and sharing. I mean, I'm going to be honest for a second, having the conversation about the journey and saying how I want to go on one, I feel like I think it comes across I easily share, but in saying that, I'm not going to lie, there were nerves, because I know I have clients that might watch or listen to this podcast, and the fear and wonder of will my clients see me different if saying that I want to do this and one day knowing that I will do it, are my clients going to view me differently? I don't think they will. but I just, there are nerves in saying this. So to go out, like, that's just saying I want to go out and say that you did it, like another thing. So I just want to thank you for being vulnerable. I want to thank you for the post. And also thank you for being my friend and having these conversations. And when we have them just ourselves and also on this, I'm excited to see where we go on these conversations on the podcast. So I just want to say thank you and give you an opportunity to let people find, like, where can they find you if they want to follow what you're putting out in the world as far as content goes.
Yeah, you can follow me on LinkedIn, Lindsay Troxell. You can check out my website. We're actually going through a rebranding right now, so I'm putting out into the world nervous system aligned business coaching, and so my business is called Our Coaching Initiative. So you can find me there. Also on Instagram at Lindsay Troxell.
And obviously, as a podcast, I'll have that in the show notes. And I just want to say one thing. You don't have to be a financial advisor or a business person to follow Lindsay because, maybe her professional work and some of the content will be geared towards advisors or business owners. But you can just replace financial advisor with whatever it is that you do. Yeah, human. Yeah, exactly. So whatever is good for an advisor is going to be good for you. So don't think that you, like, again, this is not a financial advisor podcast. So while, yes, that's where we live, the information is applicable to everybody. So
humans.
Replace that with human and you'll be good.
Yeah.
All right, Lindsay, I want to thank you very much. And thank you very much for doing it and looking forward to doing it again here before too long.
Same. Thank you for having me.